Today we're here for the first public event for the new ISS theme project, which is on creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. The team members on this project have been working very hard throughout the year to get to know each other, to learn each other's languages, and to plan all kinds of interesting workshops, seminars, and conferences for the upcoming year. They've made an enormous amount of progress, I think, this year, in fits and starts, but enormous amount of progress. Anytime you try and schedule 10 or 12 people to be in the same room at the same time at Cornell, it's virtually, I mean, that's a task in itself. I know that they're very much looking forward to next year and to sort of recouping some of the investment that they put in this year into planning and coordination. I want to just say a couple words about the ISS theme projects for those of you who may not be familiar with the ISS and what it is that we do. The ISS is a provost level initiative that's intended to foster research and cross-disciplinary collaboration and dialogue between social scientists at Cornell. As it turns out, the social scientists at Cornell are spread across 8 different colleges and dozens of different departments, which means sometimes you don't actually connect with people who are working on topics that are really quite near and dear to your own heart. The ISS has 3 flagship programs, really. One is a biannual small grants program. Another is an in-residence faculty fellowship year that's designed for assistant professors and associate professors who are sort of coming up on their promotion reviews, and then the theme projects. Each theme project brings together 8 to 10 faculty from across campus for a total of 3 years, a planning year, in a high activity year that's in the second year, and also a wrap-up year. And each team, as you can imagine, is organized around a common theme or project that really can be approached from multiple disciplinary perspectives. So it really is an organization that's trying to bring together faculty to engage in some real and meaningful cross-disciplinary dialogue and research. The team that's wrapping up its in-residence year this year is the LAM team. I see a number of people from the LAM team here. Thank you for supporting the ISS. It's absolutely fantastic. Some of the other theme projects over the past years have examined everything from the changing family to contested knowledge, to poverty and mobility, to social networks in the age of the internet, and also judgment and decision making. And the team prior to the LAN team was about immigration. So it's truly a broad range of topics that are at the heart of contemporary social science research. So we're very excited about the current team, which, as you'll hear about in a few minutes, is working on issues related to creativity and innovation. What makes an idea creative? How do we know creativity when we see it? How can we foster innovation? How do people and organizations evaluate ideas and place value on creativity and innovation? And what's the relationship between creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurial activity as we think about it? It's a very diverse team, bringing together sociologists, economists, psychologists, organizational scholars, and legal scholars from ILR, JGSM, Arts and Sciences, CALS, and the law school. So truly a very diverse team. I also think it's true that this team is one of the more intellectually ambitious teams, not only in terms of the range of disciplines that are represented, but also in terms of the approach to the social sciences that are represented by the team members. And its goals. So we may all think that we know what creativity means, what innovation means, what entrepreneurship means, but when you dig a little bit deeper and you start talking across the dialogue, the disciplines, you discover that these are really very slippery concepts that people within the same discipline, let alone people from disciplines, may define in very different ways and may approach with very different sorts of social science toolkits. But you really shouldn't want to hear about innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship from me. So what I'm going to do is introduce Bob Buhrman, who's going to say a few words, I think, about the project and how it fits into the broader context of University of Initiatives. And then Bob's going to introduce Diane Burton, a sociologist, and as luck would have it, she also managed to survive me as a office mate in graduate school a little while ago. Diane is from the Institute for Labor Relations, and she's also the team leader for the CIE project. But my job is to introduce Bob, who is eager. I can tell he's eager to come up here. Bob is, as you know, I assume, the Vice Provost of Research at Cornell. His portfolio includes all activities related to external research, including developing policies, thinking about technology transfer and intellectual property, sponsored programs, research integrity, and also facilitating public-private partnerships, which of course have a lot of entrepreneurial activities embedded in them. Bob is also an extremely successful academic in his own right. He currently holds the John Edson Sweet Professor of Engineering in the School of Applied Engineering and Physics. Before he headed into the Provost's office, Bob founded and directed the Center for Nanoscale Systems and Information Technologies, and he's a fellow of both the American Physical Society and the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. So please join me in welcoming Bob Buhrman.
Thanks, Kim. It's a pleasure to be here. As perhaps some of you know, my boss, the provost, was on, when he came into the office, was on a staff cutting agenda, so we reduced vice provost a little bit. So you folks lost your vice provost of social sciences. Of course, then he left Cornell and went to, what is he, provost at Tufts, is that right, as far as we know, at last I heard. The social science programs now are, I wouldn't say report, but are supported by the Office of the Vice Provost of Research, CISR, SRI, and the ISS. ISS was started, I guess, 9 or 10 years ago, and from all accounts I have heard, it's been a quite successful and a quite important program. The thing that I care about in my job in the Day Hall is supporting particularly interdisciplinary, cross-college, cross-department activities, and this is something that clearly resonates with that. As I noticed in looking over the material, I think 5 different colleges are represented amongst the theme leaders this year, which is the kind of thing that's not the only way to do research at Cornell and scholarship at Cornell, but is a very important thing. Partly because of a distributed, somewhat weird sometimes way of how we make appointments, but the Cornell strength has really been in my areas, and I think all the other areas that I see in these cross-disciplinary areas. So I'm very supportive of this, and I'm also particularly supportive of this particular theme. I'm sure you chose it just for me, but the tech transfer office, as Kim said, reports to through my office, and Cornell has a reputation of not being very good at tech transfer and entrepreneurship. That's actually a somewhat false statement. But the thing is, we don't have, Ithaca Gorges is not equivalent to Silicon Valley, as far as I can tell. But one of the things that was discovered when they were putting together the New York Tech campus, and they were trolling our alumni for all the knowledge we could get to make the case, Cornell is like number 3 in entrepreneurial graduates. They just don't stay in upstate New York. And given how late it takes for spring to come, you might think you can understand that. A few months ago, I was given a report saying that Cornell alumni rank 6th in the world amongst universities in starting up companies and getting first round venture investment. So we do it, but we do it elsewhere. But we need to know how to do it better, and of course the state would love me to figure out how to do it in this area, because upstate New York remains an economic problem outside of the universities. So this is a great theme. I'm sure you're going to look at it not from how to benefit Cornell, but the world and how people work together. So it's very interesting and very exciting. And then I'm now going to have to apologize and say that in 20 minutes or so I have to leave, because I got myself double booked and I have to go to a much less exciting meeting with the faculty senate, the university senate, to tell them about research a little bit. So I apologize for that. So when I leave, it's not because I don't think this is more important. It is. So unless there are any questions, I would just like to move on and introduce our speaker, as was announced. And the team's leader for this year's project is Professor Diane Burton of the ILR School. I expect most of you know. Diane joined the faculty here at Cornell in 2009, and her appointment in IR is in Human Resource Studies with courtesy appointments in Organizational Behavior and Sociology. She earned her undergraduate degree at Carnegie Mellon and a Master's of Education from Harvard Graduate School of Education. She worked in IT and computer educational computing at Carnegie Mellon, Harvard Law, Northwestern, and spent several years consulting for Apple Computer. Is that pretty impressive? I've only been at Cornell. It's amazing. She then went on and earned her PhD in sociology at Stanford. I guess that's where Kim and you stayed up late doing things you're not going to tell me about. Where she also serves as a lecturer and researcher in organizational behavior and human resources at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. She then went to Harvard, is that correct? Harvard Business School, teaching leadership and organizational behavior, and then moved downriver a mile to MIT, Sloan School of Management. And then in 2009, as I said, Cornell was fortunate enough to get her to come to the place that summer never comes. Professor Burton's primary research is in the study of high-tech startups in Silicon Valley, including the study of entrepreneurial teams and executive careers. And she most recently has been studying R&D teams. So it seems to me she's a great choice to be the leader of this team, and I'm sure it's going to be a very exciting and very informative and impactful year. So Diane?
Thank you. Thank you all, and really, thank you so much for being here. I was confessing to my other team members that I was sure I was going to be talking to an empty room, and will you please tell your friends and family and students to come, and they did, and you're all here, so thank you so much. We're very excited about this project. We've got big plans, we've got big ambitions, as Kim said, but we're just starting. So at this moment, I'm going to pose a lot of questions. We don't have the answers, and we hope you'll be part of building the answers and developing the new knowledge. This is a moment when we really can change things, and we need to change things. We start this project with a couple of premises, right? Some basic premises that we're asserting. First, that entrepreneurship and innovation are important engines for the global economy, that there's growing interest in and demand for entrepreneurship education, and that there's a need for a social science, an interdisciplinary social science perspective to build new knowledge and to inform this curriculum. Most importantly, Cornell can bring a distinctive perspective. Why? Because we've got some essential building blocks here at Cornell, right? 3 building blocks. The first is really incredible strength in the social sciences across the university. We've got great departments here. We've got strong disciplines, excellent departments, excellence in social sciences. We also have unique strengths. We have world-class programs in industrial and labor relations and in science and technology studies. These are rare and precious and unique, and we are thought leaders in the world in these programs and in these topics. And that's the second building block that we're going to bring together. And the third is our deep traditions, right? From the founding, from Ezra Cornell's vision of what Cornell should be about, bringing practice and theory together, right? Extending, reaching out, changing the world practically, but grounded in the humanities, the arts, in the ivory tower, but spreading outward. And so these building blocks really make us a place that we can make progress. We can do things that other places can't do. Almost everyone who's working on these topics, creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship, is coming at it almost exclusively from the perspective of economics, from the perspective of science, engineering, or from the perspective of finance. We can say something different. We can do something different. All right, so now you might be asking, why are we putting these 3 things together? Because really, we could have a theme project on any one of them, and we could fill our 3 years and beyond on any one of these topics. But we've made a choice, right? We've made a very deliberate and a strategic choice that we want to put them together. And so we're putting them together, and we're trying to articulate a social science of them. I hope in this talk I'm going to persuade you of the need for doing so and why they have to be together and why combined and together they're more powerful and we can actually make more progress on it. And so I hope I'll persuade you that you are in fact interested in creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship, and you have things to contribute and you want to be part of it. We would welcome including you. Okay, I want to start with a story. I'm going to start with a story that my STS, my Science and Technology Study folks may know. This is the story of John Harrison and the invention of the marine chronometer. It's a portrait of John Harrison. The story was popularized by Dava Sobel in a novel back in 1985. Historical, not quite novel, because she's a science journalist. It's a well-researched book. And in fact, we've got the popular version of it in Dava Sobel's story, but there's been some serious scholarly inquiry and academic treatises about this topic. In fact, the Cambridge University in the UK has just made a digital archive of all of the papers associated with the problem of longitude and has made it available. So if you're interested in this, I urge you to kind of dig. It's a fascinating, I hope I persuade you, it's a fascinating story. Okay, so in 1714, finding longitude was a known problem for several hundred years, right? This was a kind of scientific puzzle of the day. And most of the scholars who were working on it, right, the great scholars of the day, really believed that the solution was going to be found in mapping the heavens. So there was a background, right, mapping the stars. And so they were working on the problem. They were building star charts. And these are the most famous astronomers. This is Galileo. This is Copernicus, right? People who were trying to understand the size and shape of the Earth and map the movement of the stars to understand distance. Okay, in 1707, there was an incredible naval marine disaster. Nearly 2,000 sailors lost their lives when 4 giant naval ships ran aground in the rocky shores of the Scilly Islands, which is in the English Channel near Ireland. Really, this was a major naval disaster. And all of a sudden, the problem of longitude took on a new urgency, right? So this became the great problem of the day. The problem of the day, it's not coincidental that this is a moment of imperial conquest and of colonialization and of the beginning of mercantile capitalism, but this was the problem of the day, finding longitude. Some images, graphic images, it was capturing everyone's imagination. The British Parliament put out a call. They put out a call for solutions to this problem, and they awarded a prize. They put a prize on it, a kind of bounty, a huge bounty. It was 20,000 pounds sterling at the time, which is the latest estimate I saw, it's more than $4 million. So a $4 million incentive to the person who can come up with a practical and reliable method for finding longitude at sea. Now, the Board of Longitude who laid out the prize, there was a whole board, a judging board that was set out, and you can see some of the members of this board, and this is one of the documents that's from the Cambridge Digital Archive, right? It's the Lord of the Admiralty, it's some of the leading members of Parliament. But down on the bottom, you can see that there was baked into the evaluation what the solution was thought to be, right? It was going to be in astronomy. It was going to be in mapping the heavens. We have professors of astronomy at Oxford and at Cambridge. We have Sir Edmund Halley of Halley's Comet fame on the Board of Longitude. This is a classic case of there's conventional wisdom embodied in the Board of Longitude, comes to be embodied in the person of Neville Maskelyne, who was the royal astronomer in the UK, against the disruptive innovation. John Harrison was a carpenter and a farmer and a mechanic and a tinkerer and a hobby clockmaker. And so we have the conventional wisdom of kings who were building royal observatories and of astronomers who were pioneering calculus and physics and mathematics, right? And had a view that the lunar distance method was going to be the way of navigating longitude at sea. And enormous resources were devoted to building observatories, building machinery and equipment to actually do the observations, publishing star charts, right? The lower picture is the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, and you can see some of the instrumentation. It's an etching of a navigator. And of course, to do this as a navigator, you had to be quite skilled, right? You couldn't be an everyday seaman. You had to be a precision mathematician able to use these instruments. Conventional wisdom, this is the right way to do it. What happens in cloudy nights? What happens in stormy seas? Right? There were lots of problems with this method, but conventional wisdom was this is the way to go. And here we have John Harrison, our lowly carpenter, watchmaker, amateur clockmaker. Up in the upper left is the first clock that he made out of wood. It's an amazing feat where he hand-tooled the gears and used different kinds of wood in combination to get incredible accuracy. He was an amazing inventor. And these are, over the course of his lifetime, the iterations of the mechanical clock that he invented because he believed if you could keep accurate time and you knew what time it was in Greenwich, and then you could keep accurate time, you would be able to calculate distance because we know that you travel 15 degrees, right? So it was just a problem of getting clocks to work, right? John Harrison fought his entire life for the Longitude Prize. He marched himself in, he went in front of the Board of Parliament, and no one listened to him. It was this epic battle of kind of one man against the institution. And really it was on the intervention of the king that he was awarded the prize money, not by the Board of Longitude, but in spite of the Board of Longitude. He eventually won the prize money when he was a very old man in his late 70s. So in many ways, it's a happy story. It's the triumph of the lone genius. It's success. It is the creative destruction. It is genius. Okay, why am I telling you this story? Why am I telling you this story? Because it animates a lot of the things that we're interested in this project, right? This idea of the lone genius is something that pervades entrepreneurship and innovation. Is it true? Is it a myth or is it a reality? This is something that lots of people are studying. This is an image from the Institute for Quantitative Social Sciences at Harvard. A team of people put the entire patent database into a computer, and this is a kind of schematic of it. And what they tried to figure out was, all right, let's look at all of the inventions, the archive of inventions, and let's try and figure out how valuable they are. And what they show is that there's an incredibly long tail of innovation, that most innovations are worthless. They create no value, they're zeros. But down at the far end, there are these amazing breakthroughs that really are seminal. They become the foundation of value creation, of future invention. They really are world-changing breakthroughs, right? A really important research question, which at the moment is contested, it's still contested, is whether those breakthroughs are more likely to come from individuals or are they more likely to come from teams? And so far, the answer is complicated, right? Because one of the things that's interesting is that lone people, boy, they come up with a lot of harebrained schemes. They're alone, they're isolated, they don't have other people vetting and checking on what they're doing. On the other hand, they sometimes do come up with the amazing breakthroughs. But we know there's power in teams and in diversity and in collaboration. And so on average, higher value seems to be created from teams. But again, the evidence isn't very convincing. This is a wide open question. It's an important question for all of us who are trying to change things. A second idea that this story brings up is the idea of incentives. And how do we think about encouraging innovation? Are prizes the way to go? In 1714, this was it wasn't the first time there was a prize, right? It wasn't the first time, but it was relatively novel. This is a study by McKinsey. Prizes have taken off. Prizes are all the rage. We've seen an explosion in prizes being put out there. Prizes being put out by nonprofit organizations. It's really the market mentality that's pervaded philanthropy that's trying to encourage innovation. And you can see, right, it's going towards important problems like climate, like science and engineering, like space and aviation. Some of one of the most famous examples of this kind of prize is the XPrize. If you haven't heard of the XPrize, Google it. It's an amazing endeavor. But even more recently, President Obama has issued legislation where he has authorized every U.S. government agency to be able to do innovation prizes. The website is called challenge.gov, and there are over 300 innovation contests that are being put out there, problems that we are facing that they're hoping we can crowdsource, that we can get the brightest minds to come to and to attract. Is this a good thing? Is this the right thing to do? Is this the right way to encourage? Is this the best way? We don't know. We don't know. Creativity, right? I mean, this is the essence. Here we have someone who many, John Harrison, see as a creative genius. And there's a working definition of creativity among the scholars who study it, like my colleague Jack Goncalo, right? The working definition is something is creative when it is both novel and useful. Is that enough of a definition? Does that work? Was John Harris creative? Maybe. It was a known problem. It was a known solution. He persevered in making it actually work. Is he creative? Or is he an excellent mechanic? Okay, and then the last thing is who decides? Who decides whether an innovation is worthy, is valuable, is good, should be invested in, should be pursued? Who are the judges? Here we saw the judges were incredibly biased against the solution that was proposed. How often does that happen? What kind of cognitive biases do we have? And this is where Melissa Ferguson is our expert in evaluation, a member of the team, and these are some of the themes that we're going to talk about and look at. Okay, so far I've laid out some of the individual level phenomena that this story animates. And it really highlights that we really do believe as a team there's something to be learned from extraordinarily creative people. Trevor Pinch and Richard Swedberg have both done really pioneering seminal work looking closely at individuals who are thought leaders, idea creators like Schumpeter, or music technology pioneers like Bob Moog, right? We believe that this is a fruitful methodology, a way for the social sciences to learn about creativity and innovation, right? Studying artists and musicians, right? Disciplines where it's taken for granted that creativity can be nurtured, can be trained, can be evaluated. But we're not just looking at the individual level, right? Some of what we've learned from our discussion is there's an awful lot of overlap between the psychology of creativity and the economics of innovation and how we think about people engaging in this. But there's more. There's more that we can do by overlaying science and technology studies and a real appreciation for the physical material world, the materiality, and how the instruments that you work with and the materials that you work with influence how you think about things. We also know that we need to overlay the macro context. We need to bring in the sociology, the institutions, the organizational context. We need to bring in the legal regime, the governance, the competitive strategies, the market forces, and overlay on this so that we can think about how creativity and innovation work in this entrepreneurial engine that many believe is going to be the future. Okay, and so thinking of some of the macro themes that the Longitude story illustrates, right, it foreshadows some of the key problems of intellectual property and ownership, right? Whose idea was it? Who gets credit? Who wins the prize? How do we protect the idea? One of the things that John Harrison was asked to do was to hand over his invention and all of the instructions for how it is built and created so that it could be evaluated by experts. And he thought, why would I do that? Right? I've worked my entire, but that was a requirement. How do we protect ideas? How do we govern innovations? How do we value them? This broader issue of governance is a core theme. It's where law and economics and strategy really come together. What are the institutional arrangements that foster and support innovation? Fundamentally, creative destruction, right? As Richard Swedberg, my sociology colleague, has written, right? What is creative destruction? It's the unmaking of economic orders. It's overturning the institutional arrangements. Well, when does that happen? How does that happen? Where are the norms and values in society that allow that to happen? And then we have David Strang in the sociology department, who's a diffusion expert, right? And this is a story. When did the sea captains decide, instead of having someone using a sextant on deck, I will take this watch-like device and trust that as a way to find longitude? When and why do innovations diffuse? What's amazing is that the sea captains were on board and ready to use the marine chronometer decades before the Board of Longitude was willing to recognize that this was a viable solution to the problem. The experts were resistant. The practitioners embraced the technology. Okay, so this is the story of John Harrison. It's a great setup for some of the things that we're talking about. But what's missing from the Harrison story? Well, what's missing is that he was a disaster as an entrepreneur. He was a dismal failure. And in fact, the commercialization of his invention came from the copycats, the people who were sitting in the wings watching all of this effort and work. Some were his proteges, many were his competitors, but the entrepreneurial success was benefit to others. Okay, so we're troubled by that. We're interested in that. We're engaged in that. But John Harrison is a failure as an entrepreneur. Should we be studying entrepreneurial failure? What do we know about entrepreneurial failure? Again, it's one of the myths in our society that we're a place that there is no stigma of failure. Is that true? And he did not have the idea. Again, I want to reiterate, this was a known problem and in many ways a known solution. So the idea that there was an aha moment, right? And again, this is a nod to Melissa's work on the kind of unconscious, the aha, the realization, the recognition. That's not what happened to John Harrison as far as we can tell. It was a kind of persistent iteration of entrepreneurship. In thinking about lone inventors, and in celebrating lone inventors and lone entrepreneurs and lone geniuses, it's easy to forget that they are often members of teams and parts of organizations. That's more hidden. It doesn't fit into our narrative bias, but it's important for us to recognize that the embeddedness of invention and entrepreneurship. It's also important to question whether this parable, whether this story of John Harrison is relevant today. Has the world changed so much and the problems become so vast that it's impossible to imagine that a lone inventor could solve problems of hunger, of disease, of energy, of poverty, of pollution, of war? There are also some glimmers that we're not doing a good job of attracting the best and the brightest and the most talented people to solve the most important problems of the day. This was an article that was in the New York Times just a few weeks ago, right? And my favorite quote was, "This is why do these smart, quantitatively trained engineers who could help cure cancer or fix healthcare.gov want to work for a sexting app?" right? So, and there have been lots of debates on the blogosphere about how our entrepreneurship has gotten quite silly, and there are a lot of people who are investing a lot of time and energy on things that are not creating value, that are not changing the world, that are not important for us to be working on. There's also some evidence that we're not attracting investors to support the kinds of innovation and breakthroughs that we need. This is a graphic from the American Academy of Arts and Sciences that shows the declining investment from the federal government in R&D, kind of drastic decline and flat over time. This is R&D as a share of the federal budget. The federal budget in 2013 was 100 and some billion. Somebody knows this. I wrote it down because I didn't know it off the top of my head. About $140 billion in R&D, and it's proportionally been declining over time. Okay, is the private sector stepping in? No, it doesn't look like it. Private sector investments in R&D have been relatively flat and possibly declining. All right, who's stepping in? The venture capitalists. Wow, okay, venture capital investment. This represents about $29 billion, about a quarter of the US government investment. Relatively stable over time, but that's an impressive amount of money. But when you unpack it, where are these investors investing? Very little in the riskiest, earliest seed stage, the places where breakthroughs are happening. This is later stage investments in private equity, rolling up hospitals, putting another Dunkin' Donuts out there, right? Most of the money is going towards things like cronuts, not breakthroughs. And there's growing evidence that to the extent we are attracting people, and there are people who are motivated to work on important problems, there are barriers. There are biases. There are gender barriers, well known, well established. Hot off the presses article in the National Academy of Sciences, investors prefer entrepreneurial ventures pitched by attractive men as opposed to unattractive men, but certainly any man over women. So appearance, gender, age, ethnicity, right? There's all sorts of barriers to getting the people that we need working on the problems that we need to work on. This is why we need a social science of creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. This is why bringing a disciplinary lens and working together collaboratively can help. And so we have a lot of disciplines represented on our team, and our gears are meshing. We're trying, and we're optimistic. I heard a talk yesterday, and the quip was, there's a difference between optimism and hope. Right? Optimism is, yeah, it'll work out, and hope is, I hope it works out. I'm going to try to make it work out. I'm gonna keep working at it. And so we're hoping this interdisciplinary approach will work out. We're built on three pillars, like all academic projects, like everything in the university. We've got a research component, we've got a teaching component, we've got an outreach component. Our research, a huge part of the budget of our project is going to be really oriented towards funding collaborative interdisciplinary research projects. We will have funding for students. We will have funding for projects. We want them to be team and collaborative. We're practicing what we preach. We're going to offer a doctoral seminar to try and bring people together. We have a sense that everybody has one student and everybody's in a different department, but as you can see in this room, there's an incredible community of people who are interested in these topics. We're also in the process of developing new undergraduate courses that will be offered across campus and engaging in outreach. We don't want to create yet another seminar series. There are too many of them on campus. And so what we're going to do is we're going to partner with the existing seminar series and co-sponsor people, because there are economists and there are sociologists and there are psychologists and there are people in the Dyson School. There are people all over campus who come here to Cornell that talk about things that are relevant. We're going to aggregate. And then we're going to put together some topical workshops. Again, we've broken this out. We've kind of got three sub-themes that we think are interrelated, that are connected. We've got creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Our creativity focus, we're really going to draw on laboratory psychology. laboratory research. Our team leaders over here, Melissa and Jack, are working hard. They've brought their labs with them. But we also really have some energy and excitement around engaging with extraordinarily creative individuals. And Trevor Pinch and Richard Swedberg are leading the effort on there, helping us think through workshops on about the theories and practices of creativity. And then we have a new graduate seminar that's going to be offered, probably not next year, the year after, but it's in development. Our innovation, we have Aija Leiponen and Olga Khessina, and I have everybody's name on the next slide, but we have a lot of Chuck Whitehead from the law school. We have a lot of projects where we're doing both quantitative and archival research. We're looking at things like intellectual property, organizational innovation, patents, alternative to patents. We have 2 focus projects. One is on innovation in finance that Chuck is leading, and the other is innovations in music and music technology that Trevor's leading. Here in the innovation theme, we're going to be doing a lot of co-sponsored work, and we're developing courses to be offered both here at Ithaca and at the New York City Tech Campus. Our third topic, entrepreneurship, Wesley Sine from the Johnson School and myself, we've been working on entrepreneurship for a long time, doing quantitative and field research, looking at new ventures, who's creating them, where are they, what's it like to be an entrepreneur? Do entrepreneurs create good jobs? We've also got some case-based research that we're working on. Trevor has been connecting with eLab and some of the new music technology startups that are coming out of that. Here, we're grateful for the presence of entrepreneurship at Cornell and Zach Schulman and his organization as an umbrella partner in helping us with entrepreneurship. We'll be doing a conference on entrepreneurial careers and offering new courses, a new graduate course on law and entrepreneurship. This is our timeline. So as Kim already mapped out for you, we're just getting started. We're really trying to figure out what our projects are. Next year, we're going to go gangbusters. We're going to be working aggressively, energetically, enthusiastically. We'll be offering lots of things. We're going to spam you to death via the email. Don't delete. Pay attention. Come, join us. We have some big questions that are animating this. I started to talk about them with respect to John Harrison, but let me just lay them out here again, right? How does context and environment influence creativity? How do we recognize creative ideas? What can we learn from extraordinarily creative individuals? And can we teach people to be more creative? What can we learn from studying innovation at different levels of analysis? The individual, the group, the organization, the region. I have a new student who's from regional planning, interested in entrepreneurship in regions. Cultural values, social values embedded in innovation, right? This is the essence of what the Science and Technology Studies Department has been about. How and why do innovations become widely adopted? Again, our diffusion story. How do institutions enable, inhibit, and moderate innovation? And can we stimulate it and encourage it? Entrepreneurship. So I have to confess, my team was deeply offended by the big green dollar sign. And this is my coming from the business school bias. And so I had originally written the question, to what extent do innovation and entrepreneurship drive economic prosperity and social welfare? And so we want to change this because we really do believe there's more to entrepreneurship than just profit. And we care passionately about social entrepreneurship and venture creation of all kinds, from the for-profit to the nonprofit, things that are changing the world, trying to solve the most important problems of our day. And can we encourage that and spark that? And can we kind of push the envelope here? We want to look closely at new firms and new industries and how they differ and what we can learn from their emergence. And we really want to fundamentally question whether we're right, if entrepreneurship is the engine of new jobs and job creation. Are these good jobs? And this is my ILR bias. Are these good jobs? And so far, the evidence isn't looking very good. Anybody heard of Mechanical Turk? I mean, this is the sweatshop exploitation of the planet. And all of you who are doing lab studies with Mechanical Turk, where people are spending hours and hours unregulated in their home, pennies, it's looking like a putting out system of days of yore, enabled by technology and hidden from view. Okay. We have emphases across our team, although we're all participating and we really are trying to come together. I have kind of bucketed everyone. You'll see most people's names appear in more than one bucket. We all have name tags. And so if you're interested in these topics, we hope you'll introduce yourself, you'll come and meet us and talk with us about it. We have a mission. Our mission is to create a rigorous social scientific understanding of the processes by which creative people develop novel ideas that garner interest and support from stakeholders, lead to new organizations and new industries that fundamentally alter economic and social orders. Thank you.